Queen stood 8 feet tall on the crystal platform of her throne room. Her skin sparkled like blue diamonds in the light. Heavy armor plates grew naturally from her shoulders and arms. When she moved, the sound echoed through the massive hall like distant thunder. She watched the small human walk toward her, looked tiny next to the guards who flanked him. The guards were each as tall as their queen, with the same crystal skin and natural armor. Wore a simple gray diplomatic uniform that made him look even smaller. "Your Majesty," said with a bow. His voice was calm and steady. "I bring greetings from Earth and hope for continued friendship between our peoples." Had met many humans before. They usually seemed nervous around, most aliens did. The Empire controlled 12 star systems. Their warriors could crush steel with their bare hands. Their natural armor could stop most weapons. Other species respected them through fear. But was different. He did not shake or sweat. He looked directly at her when he spoke. During the trade talks that followed, he asked thoughtful questions about history and culture. He seemed genuinely interested in learning about her people. "Tell me," she said during a break in negotiations, "what do humans think of when they hear about?" Considered the question carefully. Most humans see your people as powerful warriors. They respect your strength but do not understand your culture. They think strength only means fighting. "And what do you think?" "I think your strength comes from more than just your bodies. Your people have built something that lasts. That takes a different kind of power." Found herself curious about this quiet human. He was not like the others who had come before. They usually tried to impress her with grand words or expensive gifts, simply listened and asked good questions. The trade negotiations went well. Earth needed raw materials that worlds had plenty of, needed the advanced computer systems that humans made. It was a good deal for both sides. On the last day of talks, made a decision that surprised everyone. She announced in front of both delegations, "I offer you a marriage alliance between our peoples. Will you accept?" The room went silent. The human diplomats looked shocked. The council members whispered among themselves. This had never happened before. Stood quietly for a long moment. Could see him thinking through all the implications. A marriage between a human and a queen would change everything. It would make Earth a major ally instead of just a trading partner. "Your Majesty," said finally, "I am honored by your offer. If this union would truly benefit both our peoples, then yes, I accept." The wedding preparations took 3 months. Representatives from dozens of alien species came to Valor Prime. The Crystal City sparkled with ships from across the galaxy. Everyone wanted to see this strange union between the mighty queen and the small human diplomat. Many of the alien guests whispered about the match. The ambassador called it amusing. The trade minister said humans were punching above their weight. Most thought was being kind to a weak species. Spent the weeks before the wedding learning customs. He studied their ancient ceremonies and tried to understand their complex honor codes. He practiced the traditional wedding responses until he could say them perfectly. The wedding day arrived with great fanfare. The ceremony took place in the grand arena, where thousands of beings watched from crystalline viewing platforms. Wore ceremonial armor made especially for his smaller frame. It looked strange but showed respect for tradition. Wore the ancient battle crown of her ancestors. Her ceremonial armor was covered in precious stones that caught the light and scattered rainbows across the arena floor. She looked like a warrior goddess next to her human groom. The ceremony followed thousand-year-old traditions. Spoke his vows in perfect, which impressed the crowd. When it came time for the traditional display of strength, surprised everyone again. Instead of trying to match power, he demonstrated human precision. He took a complex mechanical puzzle that normally took engineers hours to solve. Using small tools and careful movements, he solved it in minutes. The crowd murmured in appreciation. "Strength takes many forms," he said as he finished. After the ceremony, there was a great feast. Alien dignitaries gave speeches about the new alliance. Most were polite but clearly thought this was just a political gesture. They saw as a curiosity rather than a true partner for their powerful queen. The delegation was particularly dismissive. Their leader, a warrior named N, made barely polite comments about interesting experiments and soft alliances. His words carried a hint of threat. As the evening wore on, and finally had a moment alone on a balcony overlooking the Crystal City. "Do you regret this?" asked. "Many of your people think you married above your station." Smiled, "And many of your people think you married beneath yours. Maybe that means we both chose correctly." "You are not what I expected in a human," she admitted. "What did you expect?" "Someone who would try to be. You remain completely human, but somehow that makes you more interesting, not less." Looked out over the city lights. "I have a lot to learn about your world, but I hope to bring something valuable to it as well." "You already have," said. "You have given my people something new to think about. That may be more valuable than any trade agreement." As they stood together on the balcony, neither could have known that their marriage would soon be tested in ways they could never imagine. Forces in the galaxy were already moving that would challenge everything they thought they knew about strength, courage, and what it meant to be human. 6 months had passed since the wedding and had settled into life on Valor Prime. Every morning, he walked through the crystal corridors of the royal palace to the great library. The scholars there had grown used to seeing the small human among the towering shelves of data crystals. Spent his days reading everything he could about history. He studied their ancient wars, their technology, and their combat traditions. The librarians thought it was sweet that the human consort was trying so hard to understand their culture. They helped him access old military records and weapon manuals, thinking he was just being a good husband. "Another book about sword fighting?" asked the head librarian. The old's crystal skin had turned pale blue with age. "You have read 17 texts on blade work this month." "I find your combat traditions fascinating," replied, not looking up from the holographic display. "The way your ancestors developed fighting styles around your natural armor is remarkable." Chuckled, "You humans and your academic interests. Though I suppose it is good that you try to understand us, even if you will never be able to practice these techniques yourself." Just smiled and continued reading. He had filled dozens of data tablets with notes about fighting methods, weapon designs, and tactical approaches. To the library staff, it looked like harmless scholarly work. In the afternoons, attended court sessions with Queen. He sat quietly in a smaller throne beside hers, observing the daily business of ruling an empire. Planetary governors reported on mining operations. Military commanders gave updates on fleet movements. Trade representatives negotiated deals with alien species. Rarely spoke during these sessions, but when he did, his comments were thoughtful. He had a talent for seeing problems from angles that missed. When two mining colonies were fighting over territory rights, suggested a solution that satisfied both sides. When trade talks with the stalled, he found a compromise that saved face for everyone. "Your human sees patterns we miss," General told the Queen after one particularly successful negotiation. "His mind works differently than ours." "He thinks instead of fighting," agreed. "It is refreshing." The nobles had mixed feelings about their queen's husband. They respected his intelligence and appreciated how happy he seemed to make, but they also found him puzzling. He never joined them for combat training. He avoided the gladiatorial matches that were the center of court entertainment. When they talked about famous battles, he listened politely but never shared war stories of his own. "Has he ever even held a weapon?" asked Lady Eth during one palace dinner. She was a decorated war hero who commanded respect throughout the empire. "I have seen him use eating utensils quite skillfully," joked Lord. The other nobles laughed, but not unkindly. They had grown fond of, even if they saw him as delicate. Knew what they thought of him. He could hear the whispered conversations about the gentle consort and the academic human. It did not bother him. He had work to do, and their assumptions made it easier. Every evening after dinner would excuse himself to review diplomatic reports from Earth. In reality, he was studying the technical manuals he had from the library. He learned how weapons worked, how their armor was made, and how their ships operated. He memorized the weak points in their technology and the gaps in their traditional fighting methods. Sometimes found him surrounded by holographic displays showing weapon schematics and battle formations. "Still reading about our military history?" she would ask. "I want to understand everything about your people," would reply, "including how you fight. You know you could train with our warriors if you wanted to try combat yourself." Would smile, "I prefer to understand the theory first, maybe someday." Found his dedication charming. She enjoyed their quiet evenings together, talking about politics and philosophy. Had insights that helped her rule more effectively. He saw solutions where her people saw only problems to be crushed. But lately, there were problems that could not be solved with words. Reports from the border systems were growing more troubling. They had been quiet for decades, but now their ships were being spotted near space. Scout vessels reported strange energy signatures and new ship designs that did not match any known technology. "They are testing our defenses," General reported during a security briefing, "probing for weaknesses." Listened as the military leaders discussed patrol schedules and fleet positions. They were ancient enemies of the. They were a warrior species like but they relied more on technology and less on honor. Past wars between them had been brutal affairs that lasted for years. "What do our intelligence sources tell us about their new ships?" asked quietly. The general looked surprised. The human rarely asked questions during military briefings. "We know little. They are using some kind of sonic technology that interferes with our equipment. Our crystal sensors cannot get clear readings." Made notes on his tablet. After the meeting, he requested access to the intelligence reports. General was happy to provide them, thinking the Queen's husband was just trying to stay informed. That night studied the reports carefully. The ships used sound waves as weapons. This was interesting because crystal armor, while strong against physical attacks, had different properties when it came to vibrations. Pulled up technical specifications for battle gear and cross-referenced them with what little they knew about sonic technology. "You are working late again," said, entering their private quarters. "Just trying to understand the situation with our neighbors," replied. "You worry about threats to the Empire. You are sweet to care, but the know better than to challenge us directly. We have defeated them before." Nodded, but he continued studying. Something about the intelligence reports bothered him. They were not a species that made moves without planning. If they were testing defenses, they had a reason. 3 days later, that reason became clear. Long-range sensors detected a massive fleet gathering at the edge of their territory. The ships were using the new sonic technology, and they outnumbered the nearest forces 3-1. "They mean to test our resolve," General told an emergency council session. "This is not just border raiding. This is preparation for something larger." Sat quietly through the meeting, but his mind was racing. He had read enough military history to recognize the pattern. They were not just preparing for war. They were preparing for something much more specific. That evening, he made a request that surprised everyone. He wanted access to the Royal Armory and training facilities. "Why?" asked. "I want to understand weapons and armor from a practical standpoint, not just theoretical. If there is going to be a conflict, I should know how your military equipment actually works." Granted the request, thinking it was being thorough as always. The weapons master was amused by the small human's interest but agreed to give him access. Began spending his mornings in the training facilities, examining weapons and armor with the same careful attention he gave to books. The guards thought it was endearing that the Queen's husband was trying to understand their tools of war. None of them realized that was not just learning about equipment. He was preparing for something none of them could imagine. The attack came at dawn on a day that had started like any other. Was in the training facility, testing the weight and balance of different weapons, when the emergency alarms began echoing through the palace corridors. He ran to the command center, where Queen was already receiving reports from General. The massive display screens showed 3 outer rim colonies under assault. Ships filled the space around the settlements, their weapons creating strange rippling effects in the atmosphere. "How many ships?" demanded. "Over 200 in the initial wave, Your Majesty. They hit all 3 colonies simultaneously." The general's crystal skin had darkened to deep blue with stress. "Our defenders are fighting back, but their weapons are not working as expected." Watched the battle feeds with growing concern. The warriors were brave and skilled, but something was wrong. Their movements seemed sluggish, and their famous crystal armor was cracking under the sonic weapons. "The sound attacks are disrupting our armor's natural resonance," reported Commander is from the battle zone. Her voice was strained with pain. "The crystals are vibrating against each other. It feels like being shaken apart from the inside." Stepped closer to the display screens. He had studied this exact problem during his weeks in the library. Crystal armor was incredibly strong, but it had a specific weakness to certain sound frequencies. The had clearly discovered this and built weapons to exploit it. Within 6 hours, all 3 colonies had fallen. The forces captured them without destroying them, which was unusual. Normally, they preferred to burn what they could not hold. Then the real message came. A massive ship appeared on the edge of space, broadcasting on all frequencies. The image of Warlord filled the command center screens. He was larger than most, with cybernetic implants covering half his face and arms. His natural armor had been replaced with technological enhancements that glowed with internal power. "Queen of the," his voice boomed through the speakers. "I am an war leader of the new empire. Your people have grown weak through alliances with inferior species. You make treaties with creatures that cannot even fight for themselves." Felt the insult was aimed at him, but he remained silent. His crystal skin was glowing with anger, but she controlled her voice. "What do you want, in?" "I challenge the strength of your empire. Single combat between champions as our ancestors decreed. If your champion wins, we return your colonies and withdraw. If my champion wins, you surrender the 3 systems and dissolve your alliance with the weak humans." The command center fell silent. Single combat challenges were an ancient tradition that neither nor honor would allow them to refuse. It was a way to settle major disputes without devastating wars that hurt both sides. "I accept your challenge," replied without hesitation. "When and where?" 3 days from now, the neutral moon of 7, traditional weapons only, no technological enhancements beyond what grows naturally. And cybernetic eye gleamed. "I will serve as my own champion. Who will you send to face me?" "I will face you myself," declared. "Excellent. I look forward to testing myself against the famous Queen." The transmission ended. Felt his blood turn cold. He had read about it during his research. The warlord was legendary for his combat skills even before his cybernetic enhancements. Recent intelligence reports suggested he had major technological upgrades that put him far beyond normal capabilities. General was already running combat simulations. The results were not encouraging. "Your Majesty, our analysis shows a 73% probability of defeat, and enhancements give him advantages that may be too much even for your skills." "Then I will have to be better than the computer thinks possible," replied firmly. Spent that evening running his own calculations. He accessed every piece of data the had on N and studied the technical specifications of the warlord's cybernetic systems. The more he learned, the more worried he became. En's enhancements were not just cosmetic. His cybernetic arms could generate crushing force far beyond natural strength. His artificial eye could track multiple targets and predict movement patterns. Internal processors boosted his reaction time to inhuman levels. Worst of all, the cybernetic system seemed designed specifically to counter fighting techniques. Someone had studied combat methods and built countermeasures. Found in their private quarters, meditating in preparation for battle. The traditional pre-combat ritual involved hours of mental focus and physical preparation. "You cannot fight him," said quietly. Opened her eyes. "I must. Honor demands it, and I am the strongest warrior of my people." "You are the strongest natural warrior." But En is no longer natural. His cybernetic systems give him capabilities that no biological opponent can match. "Then what do you suggest? We cannot refuse the challenge without losing face before every species in the galaxy." Took a deep breath. "Send me as your champion." Stared at him in shock. "I love you, but you are human, and would crush you without effort. I cannot let you die for my honor." "You think I would die because I am smaller and weaker than said. But size and strength are not the only factors in combat. Let me study his systems for 2 more days. Give me access to your best weapons and armor. Trust me to find a way." "This is madness. You have never even trained for real combat." Met her eyes steadily. "How do you know what I have trained for?" Something in his tone made pause. "What do you mean?" "I mean that you married a human diplomat, but you never asked what I did before I became a diplomat. Earth has conflicts too. We may not be as strong as, but we have learned to fight in our own ways." "You were a soldier." "I was a specialist. Someone who solved problems that could not be solved through conventional military means. Someone who studied enemies and found ways to defeat them regardless of their advantages." Was quiet for a long moment. "Why did you not tell me this?" "Because I wanted you to know the diplomat and scholar, not the killer. I hoped those days were behind me, but it seems the galaxy has other plans. Even if you were the greatest human warrior ever born, and cybernetics make him too dangerous, I cannot risk losing you." Moved closer to her. "And I cannot risk losing you, not when I know there might be a way to win this. Give me 2 days to prepare. If I cannot convince you that I have a real chance, I will step aside and you can face him yourself." Struggled with the decision. Every instinct told her that sending her human husband against a cybernetically enhanced warlord was suicide. But something in his voice had changed. The gentle scholar had been replaced by someone harder and more focused. 2 days, she agreed finally, "but you must promise me something." "What?" "Promise that you will not throw your life away just to spare mine. I need to know that you believe you can actually win." Kissed her forehead gently. "I promise. I would not leave you alone just to make a heroic gesture. I believe I can beat him, but only if I prepare correctly." "Then show me what you need." His first request surprised everyone. He wanted detailed technical specifications on En's cybernetic systems. Not just basic information, but engineering blueprints and operational parameters. The intelligence division worked frantically to gather what they could through spy networks and captured technology. His second request was stranger. He wanted to test various weapons against different materials and energy shields. He spent hours in the testing range, firing weapons at targets made from metals and crystals that matched technology. His third request made no sense to anyone. He wanted access to the palace maintenance systems and technical manuals for the arena on 7, where the fight would take place. "Why do you need to know about the ventilation systems?" General asked, confused. "I need to understand the entire environment where the fight will happen. Everything could be important." As prepared, Word spread through the palace that the human consort planned to serve as champion. Most thought it was romantic but doomed. The gentle scholar would die bravely but uselessly against the enhanced warlord. Let them think what they wanted. He had work to do, and assumptions about his capabilities had served him well so far. Soon, those assumptions would be put to the ultimate test. The arena on 7 was built into the side of a mountain, carved from dark stone that absorbed sound. Thousands of spectators from dozens of species filled the viewing platforms. Ships from across the galaxy orbited the small moon, their crews watching the live feeds that would broadcast this historic combat to billions of viewers. Walked into the arena wearing modified armor that gleamed under the artificial lights. The armor had been adjusted to fit his smaller frame, but it still looked strange on him. Most observers thought it was touching that the human was trying to honor traditions, even though the armor would not save him. And entered from the opposite side like a technological nightmare. The warlord stood 9 feet tall, his cybernetic enhancements making him even more imposing than his natural size suggested. Half his face was metal and circuitry. His arms had been replaced with mechanical limbs that could crush stone. Power cables ran along his spine, feeding energy to internal systems that glowed through transparent panels in his artificial skin. So, Anne's voice boomed through speakers implanted in his throat. The weak queen sends her pet human to die in her place. How fitting that the Empire's decline should end this way. Did not respond to the insult. He was studying his opponent carefully, noting the placement of the cybernetic components and looking for the weak points he had identified during his research. The arena judge, a neutral official, announced the rules. Traditional weapons only. Combat continues until death or surrender. May honor guide your actions. A weapons rack stood at each end of the arena, and moved to his side and selected a massive energy mace that crackled with power. The weapon was designed for his cybernetic strength and would have been too heavy for most biological beings to lift. Moved to his own weapons rack but made an unusual choice. Instead of taking one of the impressive swords or energy weapons, he selected several smaller items: a sonic disruptor pistol, a collapsible staff, several small devices that looked like grenades. The crowd murmured in confusion. "Is the human planning to run away and throw things?" asked a commentator broadcasting to his home system. The combat began when the judge's signal echoed through the arena, and charged forward with surprising speed for such a large being. His cybernetic legs moved with mechanical precision, covering ground faster than most biological opponents could react. But was not where Anne expected him to be. As the warlord charged, moved sideways with fluid grace, avoiding the crushing blow from the energy mace by inches. His movement was unlike anything they had ever seen. Instead of the straightforward combat style they knew, flowed like water around his opponent's attack, and spun around with mechanical efficiency, bringing his mace around in a wide arc that should have caught across the chest. But again, was not there. He had ducked under the swing and was now behind the warlord, striking at specific points on his cybernetic spine with his collapsible staff. The first few strikes seemed useless against Anne's heavy armor, but was not trying to cause damage yet. He was testing. Each strike hit a different component of the cybernetic systems and was watching carefully for any sign of response. "Stand still and fight like a warrior," and roared, turning again to face his elusive opponent. "I am fighting like a human," replied calmly. The watching crowd was beginning to realize that something unexpected was happening. The small human was not just avoiding Anne's attacks through luck. His movements were precise and controlled. He seemed to know exactly where the warlord would strike before the attack came. Had spent 2 days studying recordings of Anne's previous fights. The cybernetic enhancements made the warlord incredibly powerful, but they also made him predictable. The mechanical systems operated on programmed patterns that had learned to read. And's next attack came as a series of rapid strikes designed to overwhelm any opponent. The energy mace moved faster than biological reflexes could follow, but was not relying on reflexes alone. He had studied the timing of the cybernetic systems and knew when each strike would come. Flowed between the attacks like he was dancing. Each movement was economical and precise. He wasted no energy on unnecessary motion. While N's powerful attacks consumed energy rapidly, conserved his strength for the right moment. That moment came when, overextended on a particularly fierce strike, stepped inside the warlord's reach and activated the sonic disruptor. The device was designed to interfere with crystal armor, but had modified it. Instead of broad-spectrum sonic disruption, it now emitted a very specific frequency. The sonic pulse hit N's cybernetic systems and caused something no one expected. The warlord staggered as his mechanical components began to malfunction. Warning lights flashed along his artificial spine, and his movements became jerky and uncoordinated. "Impossible," and snarled. "Those weapons cannot affect my enhancements." "You are right," replied, circling his confused opponent. "Standard sonic disruptors cannot affect cybernetic systems, but I am not using a standard disruptor." During his preparation, had discovered something important about N's enhancements. They were built using crystal technology that they had stolen in previous raids. The crystals made the cybernetics incredibly powerful, but they also gave them the same weakness that affected armor. Had spent hours calibrating the sonic disruptor to target the specific resonance frequency of those crystals. Now, N's own enhanced strength was working against him, as his cybernetic components vibrated themselves apart. But the warlord was not finished. Even with his systems malfunctioning, he was still incredibly dangerous. And abandoned his mace and lunged forward with his bare hands, trying to grab in a crushing grip that would end the fight instantly. Was ready for this too. Azan reached for him, threw one of his small grenades directly at the warlord's chest. The device attached to N's armor and began emitting a high-pitched whine. "What trickery is this?" and demanded, trying to pull the device free. "No trickery," said, backing away. "Just applied physics." The device was not a grenade. It was a resonance amplifier that had built using technology. It took the sonic disruption that was already affecting N's cybernetics and amplified it dramatically. The effect was immediate and devastating, and cybernetic systems began failing in cascade. His artificial arms locked up. His enhanced legs could no longer support his weight. Warning alarms screamed from his internal systems as critical components overloaded. The mighty warlord crashed to his knees, his technological advantages turned into liabilities. Sparks flew from damaged circuits. The lights in his cybernetic components flickered and went dark. Walked calmly to where N knelt helpless. The warlord's biological parts were still functional, but without his cybernetic enhancements, he was just another large alien. Pressed the tip of his collapsible staff against N's throat. "Do you yield?" asked quietly, and looked up at the small human with shock and rage. How did you know?" "I studied you," replied. "I learned how your cybernetics worked, what they were made of, and how to turn your strengths into weaknesses. That is what humans do. We adapt." The arena was completely silent. Thousands of spectators stared in disbelief at the scene before them. The mighty warlord, enhanced with technology that should have made him unbeatable, had been defeated by a human using modified weapons and superior tactics. "I yield," and said finally, his voice bitter with defeat. Stepped back and deactivated his weapons. The judge's voice echoed through the arena, "Victory to champion of the Empire." The crowd erupted in chaos. Alien species that had never taken humans seriously were frantically revising their opinions. The weak species had just demonstrated capabilities that changed everything. Walked across the arena to where Queen waited in the royal viewing box. His armor was barely scratched, and he showed no signs of fatigue from the battle. He looked like he had just finished a training exercise rather than a fight to the death. Stared at her husband with new understanding. This was not the gentle scholar she had married. This was someone else entirely. Someone who could analyze an enemy, identify weaknesses, and execute a plan with deadly precision. "Who are you?" she whispered as he climbed up to join her. Smiled, and for a moment he looked like the quiet diplomat she remembered. "I am exactly who I have always been. I am just someone who learned long ago that survival often depends on letting others underestimate you." The implications of victory rippled outward from the arena like waves across the galaxy. Humanity had just announced to the universe that they were far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The news of victory spread across the galaxy faster than the fastest starships. Within hours, every major species had received detailed reports of how a single human had defeated the legendary warlord. The recordings of the battle were analyzed by military experts on 1,000 worlds. On Valor Prime, the royal palace buzzed with activity as alien ambassadors requested emergency meetings. Species that had barely acknowledged humanity's existence now wanted to know everything about human military capabilities and tactical doctrine. Found himself at the center of attention he had never wanted. The quiet diplomat who preferred libraries to battlefields was now the most famous human in the galaxy. But he handled the attention the same way he had handled everything else, with careful thought and precise action. "The defense minister wants to discuss joint training programs," General reported during an emergency council session. "The Trade Federation is offering exclusive technology sharing agreements. Even they are asking about human military advisors." Queen watched her husband as he listened to the reports. Sat in his usual chair beside her throne, taking notes and asking occasional questions. To casual observers, he looked like the same scholarly consort who had always attended these meetings, but could see the difference now. She noticed how his eyes tracked the movement of everyone in the room. She saw how he positioned himself to have clear lines of sight to all entrances. She realized that he had probably been doing these things all along, and she had just never recognized them for what they were. "What do you recommend?" she asked him during a break in the presentations. "Caution," replied. "Everyone wants to be our friend now because they think we might be dangerous. That is better than being ignored, but it brings new problems. We need to decide what kind of allies Earth wants to be." "What do you mean? Do we want to be the species that others call when they need someone defeated? Or do we want to be the species they call when they need problems solved? The choice we make now will determine how the galaxy sees humanity for generations." Understood. Power brought responsibility, and humanity was about to have more power than they had ever possessed. Later that evening, she found in their private quarters, reviewing intelligence reports from across space. The defeat of an had caused chaos in the Empire. Without their legendary war leader, various factions were fighting for control. "Do you regret it?" she asked, sitting beside him. "Regret what?" "Revealing what you really are. You could have stayed my quiet scholarly husband forever. Now the whole galaxy knows what humans are capable of." Set down his tablet and looked at her. "I revealed what I was trained to be, not what I want to be. There is a difference. But you were magnificent in that arena. You moved like no warrior I have ever seen. You thought 3 steps ahead of an opponent who had cybernetic processors helping him plan. How can you not want that glory?" Was quiet for a long moment. "Because I have seen what that kind of life costs. Before I became a diplomat, I spent years solving problems through violence. I was good at it, maybe too good. But every victory came with a price that I had to carry forever." "What price?" "Knowledge. Once you learn to see every person as a potential threat, once you train yourself to find the weakness in every defense, you can never go back to seeing the world as a safe place. Every conversation becomes an analysis of power dynamics. Every room becomes a tactical environment to be secured. Began to understand why it had seemed so different from other humans. He had been constantly alert, constantly analyzing, constantly prepared for threats that others could not even imagine. "Is that how you see me?" she asked. "As a threat to be analyzed?" Turned to face her fully. "No, you are the one person in the galaxy I have never had to evaluate as a potential enemy. From the moment we met, you showed me respect and genuine interest. That is why I was able to let my guard down enough to become the person you married. But now that guard is back up. It has to be. The galaxy just learned that humans can be dangerous. Some will want to be our allies because of that. Others will want to test us. And some will want to eliminate us before we become a bigger threat. I need to be ready for all of those possibilities." 3 days later, the first test came. A fleet under a new warlord named arrived at the edge of space. The fleet was smaller than its force, but the new leader's message was clear. "I challenge the human who defeated N," announced. "Let him face me in single combat, or I will consider him a coward who won through trickery rather than true strength." Studied the challenge from the command center. Unlike N, had no cybernetic enhancements. He was a traditional warrior who relied on natural strength and proven fighting skills. "He is trying to restore honor by proving that you cannot defeat a true warrior," General explained. "If you refuse, they will claim your victory over and was meaningless." "And if I accept and lose?" asked. "Then humanity's reputation for being dangerous disappears as quickly as it appeared." Considered the situation. He had hoped that N's defeat would discourage challenges rather than invite them, but he should have known better. In a galaxy full of warrior species, strength had to be proven repeatedly. "I accept," announced. This time, the combat took place in space, in the same arena where N had been married. The symbolism was intentional. This was not just about military prowess anymore. It was about the future of the human alliance and humanity's place in the galactic community. Was everything and had not been. Where the previous warlord had relied on technology, fought with pure skill and natural ability. He was faster, stronger, and more experienced than any opponent had ever faced. But had learned something important from his first victory. Defeating superior opponents was not about matching their strengths. It was about using advantages they did not have. The battle was longer and more difficult than fight within. Could not be defeated through technological sabotage. Instead, had to rely on superior tactics, better preparation, and the kind of strategic thinking that humans excelled at. Turned the arena itself into a weapon, using its architecture and gravity to create situations where superior strength worked against him. He employed weapons and techniques that the warrior had never encountered, fighting in a style that had no precedent in traditional alien combat doctrine. When finally yielded, bloodied but alive, the watching galaxy understood something new about humans. They were not just technologically clever or tactically innovative. They were completely unpredictable in ways that made them incredibly dangerous opponents. "How," gasped as helped him to his feet, "how do you fight like that?" "I fight like a human," replied. "We adapt to every situation because we have to. We do not have natural armor or enhanced strength or cybernetic implants. All we have is our ability to learn, plan, and change our approach until we find something that works." The victory had even greater implications than the first one. Word spread that humans could defeat enhanced opponents and natural warriors with equal effectiveness. Species across the galaxy began to wonder what other capabilities humanity might be hiding. But for N, the most important changes were personal. Their relationship had evolved from diplomatic marriage to genuine partnership, to something deeper than either had expected. "I understand now what I married," told him as they watched the sunset over the Crystal City. "Not just a human, but a representative of everything humanity can become." And I understand what I chose when I accepted your proposal, replied. Not just a queen, but a chance to help my people find their place in something larger than themselves. 6 months later, the first joint human military unit graduated from a new training facility on Valor Prime. Human tactical specialists worked alongside warriors, creating combined forces that were more effective than either species could field alone. Found himself appointed as the first human ambassador general, responsible for coordinating military cooperation between Earth and its growing list of alien allies. It was not a role he had wanted, but it was one he was uniquely qualified to fill. The galaxy had learned to respect humanity's hidden strengths. More importantly, humans themselves had learned that they did not need to be the biggest or strongest to be valuable allies and dangerous enemies. Still preferred quiet evenings with his wife to battlefield glory. But he understood now that sometimes the greatest service one could perform was to be the guardian others never saw, the protector who kept watch while others slept safely. The human who had seemed so gentle and scholarly had revealed himself to be exactly what his species needed. Someone who could be both diplomat and warrior, scholar and strategist, husband and protector. In a galaxy full of species that excelled at one thing, humanity's greatest strength was their ability to excel at everything when circumstances demanded it. And that, more than any single victory, was the lesson that echoed across the stars. Never underestimate the species that learn to adapt, because adaptation was the most powerful force in the universe.